So welcome to today's webinar. And today we're going to talk about Stibo Systems PDX. We at Nexer, who are partner with Stibo Systems, and also working on the PDX platform, providing training, support, and rollout. We have invited two experts to have a live panel talk today. So I've invited Alexander Osha from Stibo Systems. He is the PDX director. Hi, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And then we have invited our own Christine Cerruti-Rubert, and she is our PDX customer success manager here at Nexer. And I'm going to be moderating and drive this conversation a little bit, hopefully not speaking too much because I'm not an expert on PDX. I'm the marketing director at Nexer Data Management. And today's webinar is specifically about PDX for onboarding. A couple of months ago, we held a separate PDX webinar about PDX for syndication. So you can syndicate and onboard product data on the same solution, but we decided to have different webinars around this. Okay, with no further ado, hi, Kristin. Hi, Alex. Can you start just briefly say maybe what is your role when it comes to working with the PDX, and also maybe start off with PDX for onboarding, what it is and how you work with that particular part of PDX. The ladies first, what do you think?
Yeah, ladies first.
Okay, sure. So like Anna said, my name is Kristen. I am a customer success manager here at Nexer Data Management. My background with PDX comes primarily from the supplier side of PDX, so using PDX syndication. So when it comes to onboarding, I'm the one that's helping the people who are sending the data to all of you who are listening today interested in onboarding to you. So suppliers, vendors, getting their data into PDX and getting it over to either their retailer or manufacturer, whoever's taking that data in.
Cool. And I'm Alex. I'm the product line director for PDX, including syndication, onboarding, enhanced content, all the glue that sticks the different businesses of the world together in terms of product data. And my focus is on understanding the business challenges out there in the world and finding ways of connecting solutions to those challenges so that whether you're a brand, a manufacturer, a retailer, a distributor, that you can get more value from your product data and improve your business results from different processes.
Even if most of you listening in might be familiar with Stibo Systems and PDX, there might be a few that's not. And what is it and what kind of business value does it bring?
Yeah, absolutely. So PDX stands for Product Data Exchange, and sort of it's all in the title. As we know, the world has thousands, perhaps millions of different businesses. And in order for the world of commerce to actually function, businesses need to be able to exchange product information. And everyone has their own different data model, their own schema, their own way they like to think about their products. And they also operate in different tools. Some people live in spreadsheets in Excel. Some people have enterprise-grade MDM, like Stibo Systems PIM. But at the end of the day, these businesses need to be able to exchange that information. And so what PDX, or Product Data Exchange, is all about is creating that exchange mechanism. So some of the core elements of that are being able to map from one data model to another, saying my product title looks like this, and this retailer that I work with, they want a product title that looks like that. How can I make sure that we can exchange that product title seamlessly, as well as the ability to automate all of this and roll it out at scale?
That was a good explanation. I didn't expect anything less. Because Alexander has actually, you've been part of the development from the beginning of the PDX solution, right? So we're very honored to have you with us today. So the day-to-day use, you mentioned, to manage the supplier's product data. Why do we say PDX for onboarding? Because it is really onboarding the data, not the suppliers when we talk about onboarding. And what is it that these daily operations in the PDX can be? If you give some use cases here, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. When we're talking about PDX onboarding, we're not talking about onboarding the, necessarily the supplier themselves. We're talking about onboarding their data. So what does that look like? In just the most practical sense, if a retailer is getting that product data from their vendors, from their suppliers, and like Alex mentioned, a lot of that data lives in spreadsheets or in other places. And typically a retailer wants it in a very specific way. But when you're giving the supplier a spreadsheet and saying, hey, fill this out, we all know how messy that can get. Sometimes they use a workaround, sometimes they don't use the macros correctly, and things like that. So PDX onboarding fixes that problem in a number of ways. And I think the most important way is giving those suppliers a very easy platform to log into, fill out the data exactly the way that the retailer is looking to get it, and then send it over to them. From that point, the retailer's team can go through and they can make sure the data looks exactly how they want, has all the information that they want, and send it back and forth that way for enrichment or updating versus sending spreadsheets over emails or Dropbox or all of those different methods that we can also use.
So it's really to make that work efficient, right, Alex? Sorry.
Yeah. And I just want to add one other thing. So I mean, part of being successful in in getting those data requirements filled out, like Kristen mentioned, is recognizing the different types of suppliers you're going to have to work with, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're going to be working with people, like we said, who live in spreadsheets, some people who even spreadsheets are a step too far, and then some people are full enterprise manufacturers or brands, and they have their own PIM. And that was sort of one of the things we acknowledged whenever we built PDX onboarding. We focused on creating different functionalities that satisfy the different sophistication levels of these different supplier cohorts. And so for the suppliers who just want to be able to fill out a form and do one product at a time, they can do that. For suppliers who have a spreadsheet, they can bring in their own spreadsheet that's in their own format and map it to the suppliers columns. And for suppliers who are very sophisticated, we actually have API integrations and full automation they can set up so that it really does just flow through automatically. So I just wanted to call that out.
Oh, yeah, a very good point. So in the agenda and talking about this, promoting this webinar, I've mentioned that, it's also a bit about strategic decisions. What kind of data do we want and why?
One of the things that you're going to have to deal with, obviously, whenever you get started for onboarding data, with PDX or otherwise, is you have to figure out what data you actually want to get. And that's going to start probably, you're getting data somewhere today. So you're probably going to start with a long list of things you already need to get. I'll park that for a second and come back to it. But in order to actually have a recipe for success in establishing a proper onboarding program, you as potentially the sort of data owner or IT systems owner for your MDM solution, you'll need to work with multiple stakeholders, maybe some marketing stakeholders, some fulfillment or logistics stakeholders, in order to understand what pieces of data they need in order for their parts of the business to be successful. And whenever you're engaging in these conversations, it is important to not just be a yes man or a yes woman, but just to say, okay, I can get you that data, but what does it do for you? What business need does it actually fulfill? And then also go a layer deeper anytime a piece of data is identified as a need. Does the vendor need to provide this, or can we find a way to create the value based on some other pieces of information? And what I mean by that is every requirement you put in front of a vendor is another speed bump to getting that data through. Just speaking honestly here. Obviously, with PDX, we have really great UX and capabilities to allow vendors to have a streamlined experience, but still, every question you throw their way, they're going to have to find out the answer to that. So not just asking every question you can because you can would be an important part. But then going back to all the things you're currently getting, apply the same scrutiny to those. Can we calculate those values via some other means? Do we really need to get this? What business need are these current sets of data we're pulling from suppliers? What value are they providing? So just being really skeptical of any data you think you need is just going to ultimately get you a better result in the long term in terms of cycle time or time to market. And there's just one little story I wanted to share about this that fits in nicely. So one of our retailers, who is a big chain in the sort of industrial and home improvement space, they have an onboarding solution, and they have lots of different questions they ask their suppliers, because anytime you're dealing with industrial supplies, there's lots of technical information and regulatory information in the United States. And these suppliers, one of which is a producer of sort of disposable goods, including aprons, was asked a question in their aprons category if the product was ENERGY STAR certified. And of course, that is an absurd question to ask about an apron, because it is not an electronic appliance. But what had happened because of that question was that supplier went back to their data teams and started asking if they could get information about whether or not their aprons are ENERGY STAR certified. If the retailer had taken a second and looked at their requirements that they were asking from their suppliers, that entire span of time that was wasted from that supplier having to go find the answer to the question that didn't make sense would have been resolved, and that product would have already been online and sellable.
Yeah. Good use case, or not good, maybe bad, but a very interesting and
a lesson.
Relevant one. And I'm thinking, like, when we say, that the data, this was theoretically, but also a use case that you brought up. What other, pitfalls, or what operationally, Kristin, what can happen when the data is not strategic or clear? Do you have any more examples of that, since you work with support and everyday customer support?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of points I could make in that regard. First and foremost, I think one of the greatest things about PDX, and Alex sort of touched on this, is it tends to sort of meet suppliers where they are, right? So again, we're going to have suppliers that have really great data. They have all of the information. They can sort of think ahead to what the retailer is going to ask of them. And then we have others who don't have that. I've worked with vendors who have said to me during their onboarding process, well, I need to go down into my factory and measure that piece. I don't have that data anywhere. And the great thing is they can go through those retailer requirements. They can say, here's the 5 or 6 that I don't have currently. They can gather that information, they can bring it back to PDX, and they can move forward. So I think another important call out is that the supplier's data, in that sense, doesn't have to perfectly match what the retailer is asking for up front. PDX helps create those matches for them. We have value transformations. We do, Alex mentioned mapping. So you're mapping your data to the retailer's requirements. So just the most basic example of that is if a retailer requires their dimensions to be in inches, but you keep your dimensions in centimeters, there's a quick math value transformation that can do that in PDX. So that's sort of the first part of that. The second part of it that I see, and maybe more to what you're asking, is if the expectations from the retailer are not clear up front, that's where we tend to see problems. So I think Alex's example is sort of perfect, that this didn't really make sense. And instead of the supplier stopping and saying, this question doesn't make sense, I think the answer is just no, they went ahead and they said, well, maybe there is more information that I need here. Maybe they're asking about how it's produced, or, all of these different things. And that creates a lot of extra work, and more importantly, extra time. So for me, when I'm working in a retail channel with one of our users, what I like to see is attributes that are very clearly defined, attributes that match what categories we're working in. So not Energy Star efficient for an apron, as Alex brought up. And that really helps not only the supplier save time, but ultimately it helps the retailer save time. There's less rework, there's less returning items for more or proper information. And so those are sort of the two sides of PDX and how they can work better for both sides of this equation.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. Because PDX onboarding directly integrates with your data model as a retailer or distributor, any sort of descriptions or validations that you put on your attribution will be directly reflected to the supplier user. So anything that you would put internally so that members of your team would help them to understand the data model, anything you put there will also show up to suppliers. So no double work either. One thing I think we haven't really touched on, but it is pertinent, is that PDX acts as a workspace for the supplier. In a lot of onboarding tools or ways of approaching onboarding data, you either get it right the first time or you have to start all over, right? Any mistake you make is wasted effort. But because PDX is a workspace where a supplier can, like Kristen mentioned, go back and get those measurements from the warehouse or something like that without losing progress on any products they've already started enriching, that really cuts down on the frustration, and it also gives the supplier an opportunity to really work on their data, and they can also work on setting a foundation for future efficiency. So a lot of suppliers, the tools they're used to using, they're just brute force, put the data in, and you don't get any efficiency gain next time. Maybe you can remember which places you copy and paste from next time, or maybe you can get clever with VLOOKUPs, but that might break something in a spreadsheet macro. But within PDX, you can start to think about, okay, next time, what are the pieces of automation that I want to set up, like an auto category assignment rule? Maybe all of my products have some sort of piece of information on them that say they always go to this category or that category. Or maybe I want to set up some sort of automated submission rule that say, I'm going to have my team upload files throughout the week, and then on Friday, they're all going to automatically get submitted after somebody's reviewed them. So it gives a supplier a chance to really think about their efficiency in the long term and not just treat it as a chore.
Good point. I wanted to ask you about that. What's in it for the suppliers as well? Because I knew that it's not just for the distributors and retailers to get and consolidate data into their system. It's also actually something that the suppliers could value and see that they can work more strategically and closer with their distributors and retailers. So it's actually collaboration to as I see it, and you describe that very well, Alexander. But how can you help your suppliers realizing that you said? So, Kristen, for instance, that's your role sometimes, to train or roll out this new solution within an enterprise. Do you start with a little piece of data, or do you start with a few suppliers, or how does it work?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think each retailer is going to approach it differently, right? And I like that you said, do you start with a few suppliers? I do think that we have a lot of retailers who maybe start with a small group of suppliers to see how PDX works and all of that. But looking at it more broadly, what does good supplier onboarding, right, look like? I think it's making sure that ahead of time, ahead of bringing these suppliers in, that you have some structure and some guided onboarding plans. So whether that's training or different documents, FAQs, PDFs, things that you can send ahead of time. It's about enabling your suppliers that they are going to feel confident using the platform, that it's going to be easy for them to use, that they are going to understand it. And I think that comes from making things clear and making things simple. So if they want to provide training, that's great. And as you mentioned, that's something that we here at Nexer could do for them. But also just having some on-demand resources available for them. So as I mentioned earlier, FAQs, training guides, different sort of pieces of information that they can find, that they can use, that's easy for them to find. And I think Another thing that really helps is having someone that they can reach out to directly that really understands PDX and understands the process. A lot of times, suppliers are reaching out to a buyer or a merchant or somebody like that, and that person may not completely understand the process of PDX. So having someone internally who is maybe a PDX subject matter expert or something like that is really valuable to helping your suppliers get up and running quickly, and having them use the platform confidently and succeeding in getting that data to you.
It was a bit of a leading question there, because that's what you do all day, isn't it? Not all day, but that's partially your work, training suppliers or onboarding new users. And it's of course change management when you start using a new solution. Going into the future, I mean, we all know AI is coming into most solutions nowadays. What's coming up next?
Yeah, so as you can see here, we have a lot of agents that we're thinking about adding to PDX for both syndication and onboarding use cases. And what I tried to do was just to highlight a few that are top of mind and top of priority for us. So let me just run through them quickly. So the first one one of the ones that we're working on first is called the Content Readiness Agent. And this is all about thinking through the real life scenario where you have your products and you have validations that you need to meet. And whether you're a syndication user with 1 million products and 1,000 channels, that's a lot of work to make sure you have 0 errors and 0, missed requirements across all your products. Or you're a vendor using PDX onboarding, and this is, not your full-time job. Maybe you run the company, and this is just one of the things that you have to do. And so you have maybe 100 products or something like that, and just one onboarding channel you're working with. That's sort of 2 different axes of challenge for a user. And the idea is that agents can solve that in the same way. So if you were to put like I said, 1,000 channels in front of somebody and 1 million products and all different combinations of the errors that might be there, or 100 products in one channel and all the different errors that might need to be resolved for those. Humans, because we have eyes, will need to be able to see the things that we need to fix, and ideally fix them in a way that are sort of the biggest bang for your buck, or the lowest hanging fruit first, so that you can fix 500 errors with one action rather than only one at a time. That's hard. And as much as we invest in the UX in our platform, that's still always going to be hard because you have to be able to see it. For an agent, it doesn't have eyes. It doesn't need eyes. It can just look at all of these different products and these different validations and figure out what should be done with the tools the system has, whether that's a mapping, a transformation, a specific edit, or maybe just alerting you to the fact that this data is missing and it doesn't want to make it up. So that maybe you need to go to your warehouse and get those measurements, for example, and give these suggestions to you, the user. Maybe you can approve actions that it needs to take, or you can take that information back to your team and decide what to do with it. But it will break those things down into what's the lowest hanging fruit, what can you do to get rid of as many errors as possible and as few actions as possible, really, so that you can take a huge shortcut through the process that has to exist today, just because, again, we have to see things as humans to be able to understand and take action on them. Next is what we're calling for now the Channels on Demand agent. And this one might seem like it's limited exclusively to syndication, but the way I'd like to think about this more is it's an agent that knows how to create an integration between 2 different places. And so you could easily imagine how a retailer or a distributor could also take advantage of something like that across their ecosystem. But what we've been doing in experimentation with this is we sort of treat it as an agent, as a developer, again, of an integration. And so we've been able to take either a spreadsheet that we need to fill out or an API set of endpoints that we need to be able to connect to, and have it build sort of an application in between that can transform the data from within PDX to fit that template or to fit that API endpoint. And so a lot of cool things are going to be coming with this. whether it's just adding more channels to our channel marketplace that we still continue to manage, or putting that same agent in users' hands so that they can rapidly spin up a new template output or a new channel that they want to connect to directly. This one's super exciting. Next, we have the digital shelf agent. And this one is all about Stibo Systems. We realized that it's not just having the best data, the most trustworthy data, and being able to get it places. You also need to be able to see the results that it's having in the places it gets, whether that's your own e-com site or different marketplaces around the world. You need to see how your content is driving business results, whether that's conversion or sales performance, reviews, things like that. And so we're working on partnering with some different external digital shelf analytics providers. And as their bread and butter is web scraping and looking at who owns the buy box or what conversion rates and sales performance and review sentiment analysis and SEO and all those wonderful things. And we want to bring those into our platform so that you, as a data owner, can actually see how to take those insights and turn those into actions. Because the problem that exists today is that there's insight and then there's action, and they're completely different systems, and there aren't a whole lot of ways you can actually make those mesh. And so we're trying to solve that through agents. That way we can not have to become a web scraping company, which we don't really want to be. And then finally, probably the most exciting thing that I've from engaging with different retailers and distributors or even manufacturers is the upload anything agent. And the idea with this is that your suppliers have a myriad of different templates in terms of spreadsheets, or maybe even a Word doc, or maybe a PDF spec sheet, or I've seen people that have their data on PowerPoint slides, which sounds insane, but it's true. And an agent that can take that unstructured data and make it fit into the channel requirements for the onboarding channel or the syndication channel, and do that in as few steps as possible with a guided experience. And so this is sort of a step on the way of really streamlining the entire process. So PDX already today does a lot of these things, but you have to start with a spreadsheet, or you have to start with entering into a form or an API integration. This is really for the really ugly things. And there's one other value point that I wanted to call out that from talking to some of the different retailers and distributors out there, is that there's a lot of information that is locked inside of a spec sheet. And so these customers who are onboarding data, they'll onboard a lot of data, and then they'll have a digital asset for a spec sheet that's a PDF usually. And then that spec sheet, PDF, goes into their MDM solution, and it's still just a PDF. And they don't have any access to the information that's inside that PDF. And so another layer to this, which I think drives not just efficiency value, but breadth of data coverage value, is pulling the information out of those spec sheets and representing those as structured data on the product, so that the retailer or distributor doesn't just have the spec sheet. Of course, they need that because it's sort of an official document, but also the data from inside of it they can also now have access to and use for whatever business purpose they need it for.
It's truly amazing to pull out from, like you said, a PDF, but also from a crappy mobile picture, maybe some real data. That's what we look forward to.
So excited about Upload Anything. I just wanted to share like a really brief antidote, because I think that people think that like this isn't. I think people see the value from like a PDF perspective, but we were working with a customer who sent us an image of like the back of a like bottle or something, like a food product, right? And has all the nutritional facts, and the retailer needed that information. And we said, no, it needs to be in a spreadsheet. And so they took that image and they pasted it into a spreadsheet and they sent us the spreadsheet. And it was a good learning experience for the team here to say, well, we maybe need to be a little bit clearer when we say in a spreadsheet. But with that said, something like this would be so helpful for suppliers like that, right? Because a lot of that information, similar to a spec sheet, sort of just lives in one place. They don't have it broken down in columns and rows in Excel. So I'm super excited about this Upload Anything agent. I think it's going to be awesome.
That was the example I was thinking of, Kristin. Thank
What are
you.
you thinking? Yeah.
Well, finally, I think you've shared so many interesting and relevant things today about the PDX for onboarding. The business case with the PDX, you mentioned a few of the things, of course, the efficiency and the increased collaboration with the suppliers and all this. But is there a way to really measure, like maybe onboarding time or cycle time that you can recommend if there's somebody says, how do you really measure the ROI of investing in the PDX? So what do you say, Alex, if somebody feels like, okay, this is something that we really want to invest in? And so what is the business case, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it's two things, right? So one is the end-to-end cycle time, throughput time, whatever you want to call it, where you can say, well, first you need to stand up these measurements today, right? So if you don't already have these measurements in place in your organization, you should, take a serious look at figuring out how you can implement them. And if you're using Stibo Systems as your MDM solution, there should be ways for you to do that. And maybe in other solutions as well. So once you're measuring it, then you have a baseline. And then you can start to pick apart by maybe conduct interviews with your vendors, your suppliers, what their process looks like, and see where the sticking points are. And then if you find out that a lot of those sticking points are those value points that we mentioned, so sort of that the data, making their data match your requirements, things like that, then it's an obvious opportunity for you to at least explore what PDX onboarding can do for reducing that cycle time. But then there's also not just the how quickly you can get the data in and out, but there's also the quality of the data. And the fact that PDX onboarding provides that sort of feedback layer and a direct view real time into your data model requirements will improve the data quality results as well. So you can have a clear line of messaging back and forth. You can have as much transparency in your data model requirements as you can, and that'll result in not just getting bad data faster, but getting the actual results you want.
Thanks. That was a good summary, I think. And for everybody listening in, here's some contact information to Kristin or Alex if you are interested in taking the next step with PDX, or if you have any challenges using the PDX today, or just see all these opportunities that we see with the PDX. And I think that was it for today. How do you feel, Alex and Kristin? Did you cover all that you wanted to talk about today, or do you have something to add?
Oh, there's always so much, but yeah, I think we did a great job, covering some of the main things, and some interesting stories as well.
Yeah, and you, Kristin, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Alex and I could probably go on and tell stories and share things forever, but I think we covered everything we needed to for this. We're happy to talk more with people if they have questions.
And before we go over to the discussion session, I just want to say thank you for everybody listening in, and follow us on LinkedIn, Stibo Systems, or Nexer Data Management to get an invite or a link to the next webinar around PDX, whether it's a PDX channel or it's some future feature on the PDX. But stay tuned, as they say. And thank you so much, Alex and Kristin, for joining me today in this talk.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.